gameplay in this title is absolutely superb. I mean, there's no other way to say it. In sharp contrast to the narrative, this game is fucking amazing to play. Ezio has more toys to work with, the missions are simple but exciting, and the assassin recruits make for extraordinary gameplay situations. I do have some gripes to discuss, and we'll get to those, but largely, the world is fantastic to interact with. And once again, playing as Ezio in Renaissance Italy is just the purest form of fun. And with this small summary of the gameplay finished, let's get into the weeds. The parkour and freerunning in this game stems from the same engine as the prior two games. Although Assassin's Creed 2 added speed to Ezio's freerunning, it did not add anything mechanically. The animations and movements remain almost exactly the same. Brotherhood takes the Ezio from the second game and plops him right down here in this game. No added traversal options, no improved mechanics, and his speed remains the same. This is not meant to be a complaint, by the way. Outside of Assassin's Creed 1, I've always considered the first generation of Assassin's Creed games to possess fairly serviceable freerunning, although I do prefer Generation 2's parkour systems in Assassin's Creed 3, Black Flag, and Rogue. The gameplay is neither hurt nor improved because of the parkour here. A place where it is improved lies in Ezio's added tools. Not only did Ezio retain the skills to pick up various weapons from enemies and use them seamlessly, and not only did he preserve the equipment he was granted in the last game, I just drank a beer, sorry. The devs provided more toys to play with and more ways to play with them. Ezio kept his close quarter combat options, with his double hidden blades, sword, knife, and smoke bombs making their return, but Ubisoft provided our young hero with added options for ranged combat, a facet of Ezio's gameplay where he truly suffered in the last game. While the tried and true throwing knives are still present and fully reliable, Brotherhood wanted us to go to town with the upgraded hidden blade pistol, improved poison options, and the much anticipated crossbow for any hostile at further distances. Although the combat as a whole is the worst part of Brotherhood's gameplay, we'll touch on this soon, the tools we can employ here are plenty and thrilling. By far, the greatest part of this game is the assassin recruit system. Oh my god, is this shit fun! I want to go over everything about this system because it's just so wonderful. After recruiting a citizen of Rome, he or she becomes an assassin that can be called at almost any time on a short cooldown. You can recruit up to 10 assassins, and each bar below your health indicates a reinforcement call for 2 of these recruits. And, of course, I sought out and found only the most efficient and resilient followers in the land. Giovanni! My boy! Each of them have a different name, unique character model, and even outfit, with small variations to their attire here and there. I chose to enlist an entire team of men, with one badass bitch to bounce on my dick. Badass bitch just bouncing on my dick, bouncing on my dick. I had to make sure some estrogen leaked through into my adventure. Not only can you choose which citizens you can recruit, but you can also customize their garb with different colors. It's not that extensive, but all of this stuff combined makes each recruit memorable instead of dry and replicative. The system of calling in assassin reinforcements throughout the game is just so mechanically gratifying. You have the ability to target almost any hostile you wish, and with one click of a button, your allies will appear and engage them in combat. In my mind, the act of having your assassins show up in a fight is a small event that simulates a planned and coordinated strike, rather than what we actually see, your allies appearing out of thin air to assist you. But even if the player simply viewed it as the latter, who gives a shit? This is so fucking badass! Watching my brothers enter the area to protect me, come to my rescue, or just give the Templar peons what they so deserve is incredible to be a part of. These guys can be wonderfully brutal, and watching them fight Borgia guards just makes me all tingly inside. When first called upon, the recruits will attempt to assassinate targeted enemies in one hit. If this fails, or if there are more than one enemy in the vicinity, your allies will then continue to engage them in hand-to-hand fighting until all enemies are soundly defeated. These engagements can turn into massive battles, with enemies calling in reinforcements and you yourself calling in more recruits. I absolutely fell in love with going into large camps of enemies and just calling in every single assassin I could. The area would become a meat grinder, with all recruits involved fighting their own fights and holding their own. In the countryside or down in the streets of the city, wars between the assassins and Templars are waged almost never-endingly. I mean, look at this shit. I call them in, and within 10 seconds, everyone is dead. These Poor dudes. Most of the time, I would just be looting the bodies while my men slaughtered everyone around me. Recruits can gain experience as well, and with experience comes leveling systems. A level 1 recruit has little armor and only has hidden blades to use, but with each passing level, they will gain defensive and offensive tools to use while they help you in a fight. They can end up with upgraded health, heavier armor, hidden blade pistols, throwing knives, and even smoke bombs. These progressive upgrades make the fights more visually entertaining, as all of these tools make their appearance in the environment around you amazingly chaotic. In combat, once an assassin loses all health and dies, they are unavailable for a certain amount of time. However, if these recruits die a second time, they are gone completely, and Ezio must, once again, turn to recruitment to fill his ranks. And this leads into perhaps the most interesting part of this system. Strangely enough, the leveling and death mechanics also make you somewhat bond with these allies. Not only are you privy to their initial motivations to join the Brotherhood and liberate their cities from Borgia rule when you first encounter them, but once you begin to deploy them in combat throughout the story, you begin to have shared experiences with these allies. Knowing that they can get stronger and become more adept assassins, and once you realize that losing them one time makes them subject to permanent death if they die a second time, you tend to care about how you employ them. These shared experiences develop a sense of camaraderie and responsibility for their well-being, and there were many times where I rethought strategies for certain reinforcement calls, or rushed to my recruits' aid if they were in danger. Along with what I'm about to discuss in a second, caring for and making sure your recruits were growing in strength and experience, all the while holding yourself accountable for their safety, makes you feel like you are indeed Ezio, the newly appointed leader of the Italian Brotherhood. This game also introduced a small but fascinating mechanic with the recruit missions. Apart from assisting Ezio in combat and his objectives throughout the story, your assassins can be sent on Brotherhood operations to various cities around the world. These missions offer diverse objectives, from intelligence gathering, assassination contracts, to protecting informants. Missions have a chance to succeed or fail, depending on which recruit you send, how many you send, and how experienced the ones you send are. I didn't find the risk of losing my men worth it, and would always try to send 2 very seasoned assassins with another 2 that weren't as experienced. When your recruits would return, they would be stronger and gain levels, as well as provide Ezio with some money as a reward for the contract being completed. If you guys don't mind a nitpick here, I want to add that some of these missions are a bit sus. I mean, a Templar peddling false science? What does that even mean? Any explanation here? Can we be given a bit more understanding on what exactly this Templar did wrong? If it was just a Templar assassination, I'd be fine with it. But this is stating that the reason for his dispatching is because he's an advocate for false science. Did he find out pregnant women can't drink? This is just further evidence of the indoctrination at work here. Ezio goes to his men and says, "There's a Templar peddling false science. I want his head on a platter." And his dudes are like, "KK, you got it. No questions, just obedience and murder." This does not at all detract from the recruit system, just from the lore of the series, and I think I'm going to bring some of this stuff up in another video I plan to make. Like I said earlier, all of these mechanics combine into making you feel like you are actually the leader of the Italian Brotherhood. The ability to forge a brotherhood and witness the members' growth from humble novices to skilled assassins was remarkably enjoyable. The strategic depth of selecting recruits for missions and customizing their abilities gave players a satisfying sense of control over their Brotherhood's operations, and the emotional weight that came from the death of your recruits would make players feel a sense of loss that compels one to always make sure one only hands battles to those who can handle them. To put the goddamn cherry on top of this fucking sundae, once a recruit reaches his highest level of experience, we even get to witness his formal induction into the Brotherhood.
The wisdom of our creed is revealed through these words. We work in the dark to serve the light. We are assassins. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Learn all those lies from your Borgia masters.
I speak the truth. It is you who tell the people lies.
Give me the code sheet.
Making a return from the second game is the presence of the dungeon missions, although here they are labeled as followers of Romulus missions. I am going to make a separate in-depth video on these guys, but for the purposes of this video I'm going to simply explain what they are and how they are another great element to the amazing gameplay of this title. The followers of Romulus are a secret society dedicated to the ideals of the ancient Roman founder, Romulus. By delving into these dungeons, players gain insights into the cult's beliefs and history, and unravel what's really going on throughout the story of the game. Like I said, a separate video on this group will be available soon. These dungeons, much like the previous title, are parkour and free-running challenges. They force you to problem solve and think critically, navigating through not only the environments, but also through complex puzzles and traps. Each dungeon is cleverly designed, bringing to the player intricate mysteries to solve and logically work through. Not only are they extremely rewarding in terms of the mental challenge, but my god are they a visual treat. The game's art and level design shine as players explore these underground labyrinths. Ancient architecture, eerie lighting, and small intricate details create an immersive experience, making the players feel like they are indeed an outsider entering a place they are not supposed to be in. In my last look back for Assassin's Creed 2, I complained about how the dungeon missions had enemies, and you might be wondering why I'm praising this game's dungeons, even though a lot of them possess hostiles. This is because a lot of the dungeons in the second title simply added enemies to dungeon areas, instead of revolving and centering the gameplay around them. Here, the dungeons are focused on the presence of these enemies, and all the architecture assists the players in navigating around or through them. This is a crucial difference to make for any game. If a game wants to increase difficulty for the player, simply adding enemies to random places does not accomplish this. Instead, revolve the gameplay and its mechanics around the existence of the enemies you want to insert. This might be a simple change, it might just be my personal opinion, but tackling missions in this manner goes a long way for some players. These dungeons were, again, one of the best parts of this game. The immersion in the environment, the parkour challenges, and the chasing sequences were extremely exciting and again makes you feel like you were inhabiting Ezio himself, as each and every movement you perform feels intuitive and rewarding. I'm even half tempted to say these are better than the second game's dungeon levels. I really can't choose which I like more. Assassin's Creed 2 had better parkour challenges and grander areas in terms of art and design, but included enemies and chases that shouldn't have been there. Whereas Brotherhood has areas more suited for enemies with more exciting chases, but I still prefer focused, specific free-running challenges in general. Yeah, I'm not sure which I prefer. Don't let my inclusion of downsides stop you from playing these parts of the games though. They're both incredible. Easily the best types of missions in both games. As you know, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is positioned around the liberation of Rome and its inhabitants from the Templars, and more specifically, the House of Borgia. In the beginning of the game, Machiavelli introduces to us the existence of Borgia-controlled territories, which become fundamental to the gameplay. The process here is quite simple. The map of Rome is divided into numerous districts, each of which are dominated and controlled by the Borgia, represented by so-called Borgia Towers. Although these areas of the map indeed contain numerous mercenaries and thieves for hire, hoes, shops, and potential assassin recruits, all these elements inside the controlled districts are locked away from the player until the Borgia Towers are destroyed and the captain of the territory killed. The towers are, of course, not easily cleared, as they are located in compounds patrolled and guarded by a plentiful number of Borgia soldiers. Once the compound is raided, the lead Borgia captain eliminated, and the tower burned down to the ground, the territory then becomes liberated, and the aforementioned factions and closed down shops become available to the player. This system isn't anything extraordinary, but given the nature of the gameplay, how could one not find this enjoyable? All the elements Ezio has at his disposal, namely his personal weapons, tools, and obviously his assassin recruits, make clearing these compounds so fucking entertaining. Players are not forced into any path or strategy here either, as one could infiltrate stealthily if one wanted, or straight up attack head on by calling in assassin reinforcements. Just another simple part of the title that is considerably enhanced by the amazing gameplay. As you journey through Rome, players witness the decaying infrastructure of the city. Landmarks and buildings have been crumbling under the influence of the Borgia, a testament to the corruption of the Templars and the necessity of its cleansing. I do want to insert my own opinion here that the withering city does not line up with the Templar ideology. As discussed before, the Templars want nothing but order and perfection. Why on earth would they not devote all their power to the preservation and building of the city's infrastructure? Honestly, I don't think this makes much sense in terms of lore, but maybe somebody could again blame this on the Borgia's so-called Dark Age of the Order. But I digress. Ezio, using a personal architect can spend his money on restoring the various buildings that have been rotting around the city. After doing this, your intermittent income will increase. I'm not sure why, but even though this facet of the gameplay is so small and arguably insignificant, there's just something about going to an area and cleaning it up that makes it so satisfying. Along with this is the restoring of the various shops that are available to the players. Like mentioned earlier, when the Borgia Towers are destroyed in a certain district, blacksmith, clothing, medical, and bank establishments can be opened up, further increasing your income. These shops do exactly what you think they do. Blacksmiths fix armor and offer stronger weapons and tools, the clothing shops offer different color outfits and bigger item pouches, and the medical posts refill your medicine slots and heal you. But by far the most enjoyable part of this was the inclusion of the banking system, which allows Ezio the opportunity to collect his income from any bank in the game, rather than having to go back to fucking Claudia like in the last game. Small conveniences in open world games like this make all the difference sometimes. This brings us to the combat. It's not good. Again, this is the worst part of the game. And listen, I want my audience to understand me and why I'm so critical of this. Assassin's Creed, up to this point, is mechanically shallow. It's serviceable, like, it works, but it's just not compelling in any way. Introducing various tools like smoke bombs and the ability to use any weapon is nice, but the combat is replicative and unbelievably stale. The developers knew this too, because they added a mechanic in this game's combat system that just screams incompetency. Gentlemen, say hello to the Leonidas kick.
Kicked me right in the pussy!
A kick so powerful, it can't be stopped. What the fuck is that?
Oh! You kicked me right in the pussy!
Nothing can stand against it. Regular soldiers, kicked. Heavy elites, kicked. Bosses? Well, what do you think?
I cannot die. Fortuna will not fail me. I am the best fighter who ever lived.
Right in the pussy!
This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets
literally anything in the game.
This is the developer saying, fuck it. Fuck it, we can't make this combat shit any better. Just give the players a get out of jail free card to eliminate anyone and anything. This is so laughably awful. Brotherhood finally gives us the crossbow to employ. I remember back in my younger years, people complaining about Altair not possessing one, as the cinematic trailer clearly shows him utilizing a crossbow. Then people were confused when it wasn't even introduced in the second game. But here, rightly so, we've gotten one. And man is it great. From range and close quarters, doesn't matter. We can use this anywhere. It's really fun. Additionally, it's another way to dispatch foes from range, as the throwing knives don't usually kill in one hit, rendering their use more of a risk than a guarantee of a stealth kill. Moreover, use of the hidden blade pistol wasn't stealthy at all, so the crossbow made the knives and pistol more viable in direct confrontation, while it itself could fill in the gap for at-range stealth eliminations. The gun is awesome. The crossbow is awesome. The smoke bombs are awesome, and the poison darts are awesome. If these instruments weren't here, oh my god, the combat would be a chore. And if you want to try this, go play Assassin's Creed 1. God, was that shit awful. Despite the tools on hand for the player, the simplistic attack, counter, attack, made for exhaustingly boring combat. Perhaps the only part of this game that is subpar amidst the rest of the title's incredible playability elsewhere. This low caliber fighting system seems to be becoming a trend while I play through the series. I really hope they fix it with the next few titles. Furthermore, adding to the fucking kick of death, Brotherhood further detracts from the enjoyment of the combat by inserting a kill chain mechanic. Once you land a killing blow on an enemy, you can then continue one-hit killing all enemies in your vicinity until you take damage. Like, is this fun? Not only can you break all enemy defenses by kicking endlessly, but now we can chain kills off each other and render the opposition totally and utterly defenseless. There's no challenge here. no real danger. There's absolutely no depth in any of this. Kind of related to this point is the inclusion of Leonardo da Vinci's missions. Leo has several missions where he informs Ezio of the location of various weapon systems that he had created with the knowledge of the apple. He tasks our hero with destroying any trace of their existence so that they can't be employed in the Templar struggle for Italy. I gotta be honest, I hated these missions. Assassin's Creed, outside of 3 and Black Flag for their naval mechanics, is not known for the vehicular side of combat. Almost all of these missions include Ezio using a certain special vehicle against the Templars and wiping out everything. It was exciting to see which vehicles Leo was able to invent as a result of the apple's insight, but the combat was frustrating with unintuitive controls and infuriating objectives. To add on to this, many times that you were on foot for the missions, the game tasks you with not being noticed and maintaining 100% stealth. You cannot be seen or identified, and you cannot use your assassin recruits. I truly believe that this is meant to artificially inflate the game time to make it longer. Because if you can employ your usual strategies in these missions, it would probably be over in half the time, maybe even less. I know that it's a bit weird for someone to bitch about, a forced stealth section in a stealth-focused game, but I like freedom. I like to choose how I approach a situation. I don't like being forced down a certain path, and I certainly don't like being gaslit into thinking I'm playing a longer game with more content just because the missions force me to play inefficiently. There's also one more thing I find odd with this. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, by its very nature, is about the assassins going into frantic mode. The Templars have taken over a city and a piece of Eden. There is no reason to keep their order hidden from this situation. The assassins need to make themselves known to the general population and get their help in overthrowing the current leadership. The recruitment system is obvious evidence of this. However, you can't tell me that stealth is the main point of the game when we are inflicting mass murders of guards with a brainwashed army of citizen soldiers, running around slaughtering hundreds of military members, all the while destroying compounds and towers with violent explosions and using ancient artifacts of technology in broad daylight. We are doing all of these things constantly, but Ezio can't be seen in a random area of Italy's countryside stopping a certain top secret vehicle from being wiped off the map. Leo's side missions force us to be stealthy in a video game that is lying to us about being a stealth game. All the while, the main missions make Rome look like a gigantic battlefield of hooded psychopaths fighting a bloodthirsty military force by committing Borgia genocide and planned demolition of infrastructure all over the city. The missions don't have a cohesive, logical through line, at least when you take the side missions into account. I don't care about the game being one about the assassins finally coming out of the dark to fight the people. That's great, just don't have me going on side missions while whispering in my ear, "Remember, this is a stealth game." It doesn't make sense. I do want to touch on the utilization of the Apple of Eden. As you are well aware, Ezio has the ability to use the apple in straight up combat, and there is a discussion to be had here. We've seen the apple's use in both the first and second Assassin's Creed games. In the first, Al-Mualim used it to control the minds of Altair's brothers in the Order in an attempt to stop the young assassin from laying waste to his plans. He used it to replicate himself and even craft illusionary replicas of all Altair's previously assassinated targets to eliminate our young hero. In the second game, Ezio uses it to simply duplicate himself multiple times in order to stop Rodrigo from entering the vault. In both of these instances, we have never been able to actually employ the apple in combat. In Brotherhood, the mechanics here are interesting. Ezio is not able to make copies of himself, nor is he able to control the minds of his enemies. Two ways we have seen the apple employed previously. But here we are seeing yet another thing the apple can do, seemingly destroy the minds of any target the possessor wishes. This is odd, because earlier in the story we see Ezio use the apple to take over two of Cesade's guards and have them kill each other, but chooses not to use it against Cesade. Why not? Is this yet another plot hole? Why not hold him in place like Mualim had done with Altair? Why not take over Cesade's mind like Mualim had done with the Levantine assassins? Why not craft an illusionary version of yourself to block his escape like Ezio had done in the last game? The apple's powers are not consistent. If you really want to play the contrarian, you could claim that everyone involved with the use of the apple doesn't fully understand it yet, and each individual we witness employing it throughout the series finds new and different ways it can be used. But I find this to be a lazy claim. The writers have control over this, and nothing describing or even hinting at this possibility was ever uttered by anyone ever. I said this earlier about Rodrigo, but I'm not sure if this is something the developers wanted players to piece together for themselves, or if it is again another major oversight and erroneous inclusion in the game. Use of the apple in combat is unique to say the least. After triggering its abilities, an illuminated circle forms around Ezio, expanding as long as you hold the action button. Any opponent caught inside the outer ring begins to attack their allies, and anyone inside the inner, secondary circle is immediately killed. killed, making these enemies grasp their heads or simply collapse from the Piece of Eden's influence. Moreover, as you can see here, it also seems to have a profound effect on Ezio himself. In addition to eradicating all opposition in his vicinity, Ezio appears to harm himself with its use, falling to his knees and losing much of his health. I love the visuals portraying the immensity of this artifact's power. Indeed, it is shown to be magical, otherworldly, and metaphysical in nature. You can even see guards cowering in fear of its use at times. Although I love the portrayal of the apple's wonder and power, its presentation was inconsistent with what we've seen so far in the series, and this presentation is also rendered to be full of plot holes when one takes into consideration all the times we've seen it on screen and all the situations its powers could have been used in. One more gripe to discuss. Assassin's Creed 1 was a AAA game with AAA content. Although I bitched about the quality of that content, it was still there, and perhaps some grace can be given to Ubisoft for it being the first entry in the series. The second game expanded the AAA experience and made the world bigger, provided players more things to do with the side missions and even the economy, allowing them to purchase businesses and make additional income. The most important element about these games that scream out to me, though, is the inclusion of different cities and locales to explore and operate in. The various cities we can travel to offer diverse landscapes, architecture, cultures, and peoples. In Brotherhood, this setting diversity is completely missing. Rome is the only city in the game. This is again evidence that the game is more of a DLC rather than a full-fledged AAA title. In order to inflate the game time and create the illusion of quality and things to do, Ubisoft forced us to be stealthy in certain sections and spend our time repairing Rome's decaying infrastructure. These side missions artificially elongates the game time and tricks players into thinking this is a $60 video game rather than a $30 expansion pack to Assassin's Creed 2. I don't like this, and I think parts of the game suffered because of it. The last thing to discuss is the environments present in the game. As mentioned in my previous lookbacks, Ubisoft again shows its mastery in crafting terrain that both facilitate movement throughout them and showcase their wonder while in them. Taking players into, say, a fantasy or sci-fi universe is tough, as one must craft the world around them and make it indeed seem foreign to the player. However, these players don't have anything to relate or compare the content to. One can't complain as justifiably as one could with a real-world example, like actual history. Ubisoft continues to hold immense skill in bringing players back in time to a place that actually existed, all the while designing these places in a way that revolves around the story and gameplay they created. The buildings, landscapes, and terrain around Rome all enable smooth free-running and parkour, but don't give us any way to justly complain about its authenticity being disingenuous. All of it is so wonderfully realized, and this whole concept can be explained by a single sentence. A concept Ubisoft carries in all the Assassin's Creed games up to Origins. The environments in Assassin's Creed are meant to look and feel natural, not realistic. There is little chance that the pegs coming out of the building and the stones jutting out the side of the structures would have been positioned in the same way here that they would have in real life, but none of it looks unnatural. Every single item in the world seems to be exactly where it should be, and none of these structures look out of place or take the players out of the world that they are inhabiting. Brilliant game design. Ubisoft has never let me down in terms of the world building. This world building pulls me into the universe of historical set pieces and time periods, and all of it is delightful. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is a double-edged sword. Although the narrative aimed to pick up the pieces of its predecessor and even possessed immense potential for continued profundity and exploration of the lore, it ultimately lacked the depth and coherence required to leave me even the least enamored. Even though the pacing of the story was satisfactory, the arcs, characters, plot points, and motivations of the narrative led to an uneven storytelling experience. The foundational elements of philosophical and sociological complexity that had driven the series up to this point were completely missing. The gaps and holes present in this story were totally unacceptable, and the continuation of Ezio's story was a disappointment to say the least. The villains were less than paper thin, and the side characters were more confusing than enjoyable. Key plot points that were important to me, like the recruit's education process and the Apple's powers, were unexplored, or at the very least underexplored, robbing players of additional mental and emotional investment in the lore. On the other hand, amidst the storytelling setbacks, Brotherhood absolutely excelled in delivering an unparalleled gameplay experience. The city of Rome, despite being the only city we can explore, served as an exciting playground for players. The intricate design of the city, complete with towering landmarks and bustling streets, enhanced the sense of immersion and authenticity. Climbing the Colosseum or traversing the rooftops of crowded markets added a level of thrill to all the missions in the game. The recruit system was incredible, making one feel like the leader of the Italian assassin order, while also bringing so many smiles and laughs to my journey. The combat, although again one of the worst parts of the game, didn't completely ruin the experience due to the improved gadgets Ezio could employ. The dungeons were joys to navigate through, combining visuals and challenging puzzles together in one seamless adventure. When looking back on the audience scores this title had gotten, the game's positive reception highlighted the significance of engaging in interactive gameplay over a compelling narrative. Players were willing to overlook the flaws in the storytelling, even if I believe many of them didn't notice these flaws. The sheer enjoyment of exploring Rome with an established, charismatic character, fantastic environments, and unbelievable systems like the assassin recruits were, in my opinion, why this game did so great. This entry in the series fell short of delivering a cohesive and emotionally impactful narrative. However, its exhilarating gameplay compensated for its narrative faults, leaving a lasting impression on the gaming community. If you ask any Assassin's Creed fan, I would bet a vast majority of them would remember Brotherhood in a positive light. While Brotherhood may not have achieved the storytelling excellence of its predecessors or successors, its legacy endures in gaming history. This entry reminds us that even in the face of narrative inadequacies, compelling and immersive gameplay can elevate a gaming experience to the realms of greatness. In my opinion, this is the most fun I've had with an Assassin's Creed game for a long time, and perhaps the scores here are well deserved. With that, the look back for this game is finished, and the look back for Revelations begins. See you then.